Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for our Extracurricular List within the Admissions Process seminar. My name is Basha. I'm an Education USA advisor. I'm based at the US-UK Fulbright Commission in London. And today we're joined by Ilian Paz. She'll introduce herself in a second. Just so you are aware, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for you to view later this week as well. So you don't have to take any notes, as you can view it again. And also, if you have any questions whilst we go through the webinar, you could pop them in the Q&A box and we'll be able to answer these once we're done, once we're at the end. So please welcome Ilian. Oh, you're on mute.
Classic on mute. Apologies. Let me try again. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Again, my name is Ilian Paz. I'm the Assistant Vice President, Dean of Admissions at Macalester College. I'm so grateful to have you here in this space, and it's my pleasure to speak to you about the role of extracurricular lists within the admissions process for undergraduate U.S. admissions. So I've been at Macalester College for 10 years. My role is oversight of selection and recruitment for the college. Macalester is a selective residential liberal arts and sciences college in St. Paul, Minnesota. We're known for our academic programs, but also for our student body. It's incredibly diverse. So about 2,100 of our students in our student body, and about 24% of them are citizens of 103 countries, all 50 US states. So our applicant pool is coming from all over the world. And I think that puts me in a great position to talk about this topic and to talk to students applying to colleges in the US. And I want to preface all of this by saying that we, as trained professionals in our work, it's important for us to identify that context looks different in different parts of the world. So I'm going to frame this from someone who works in the United States, that works at a US college, but also want to acknowledge that what extracurricular activities look like in the US can look very different in different parts of the world. And so we know that. So just so you know that, we know that too. So I want you to leave this session hopefully having a better understanding on what to think about when you're filling out an activities list and how to present yourself in the application process. So in this presentation, we're going to go through a lot of information that I hope will be helpful for you. I'm really excited to impart my knowledge and experience in this space, but I'd like to talk about why are we asking for this information and what do colleges look for in an extracurricular activities list, how to think about the types of activities that you do and to reflect on how you spend your time. I will talk about sort of the types of extracurricular activities, the activities that a student can have, and sort of the quality versus quantity. I'm going to have some examples to show you so you can see some do's and don'ts from what I see. We can pretend we're admissions officers, and some top tips on what to be thinking about when you are filling out the application. And then I'd love to hear your questions at the end as well. So let's get started. I think it's important to start this conversation with a very, very quick overview of holistic admission. And this is getting at the why. So when colleges are reading applications, colleges and universities, we are looking at a variety of different factors. And that in itself can look different from different countries and how we look at applications in a higher education landscape. So a lot of colleges in the US practice holistic admission. And you'll see from this Venn diagram, the academic, the personal, that sense of fit and belonging. We are creating college campuses with a variety of different perspectives and backgrounds. So even if it's a university that is focused on engineering or one focused in music or in the arts, our students are not one-dimensional. They come with a variety of interests, and that's how we build robust college campuses. So we're looking at the academic profile. It's so important to see that a student has the ability and the preparation to be successful on our college campuses in the classroom. So we are, in addition to the application, looking at a school report from a school administrator, letters of recommendation from an instructor or teacher. These are helping us understand how a student fits into the context of their high school. We look at recommendations to help us understand what is a student, what do they do in the classroom? How do they perform in the classroom? And of course, the transcript transcript, and any testing allows us to look at their performance in that academic space. So these are all really important, right? Academic factors are important, but also important to us are the personal factors. And so we are able to get at what is a student's interest, what drives them, what they're passionate about through the extracurricular activities, the activities list, and also through the personal essays. And you'll find there's a personal essay, for example, in the Common Application. Common Application is used by 4,000 plus universities and colleges in the United States. The singular piece of it is they have a personal essay that all of the colleges see if you apply to that college or university. And some colleges also have supplement questions. So these are additional questions to get at your interests and maybe even your view of the college's mission and values. So quite a few colleges will also have questions very specific to their college or university. And what colleges and universities are looking for is, how is this student going to be on our campus? Are they going to contribute to our campus experience? So what are we looking for? Here's some, I think, important pieces to note about what we're looking for in the activities list, but also what can be demonstrated through those letters of recommendation, through even the transcript, and through those essays too. But the activities give us a really great window into a student's passions and their interests and their hobbies outside of the classroom. And you'll find the bulk of an activities list is pulling out information, things that you do outside of the classroom experience. So it can be demonstrating leadership abilities. It could be demonstrating membership or sustained involvement in an activity that interests you. It could be playing the piano, or maybe you like to draw at home. I'll go through the different types of activities the students can do, but through that list of activities, we're seeing, again, how is a student going to engage in our communities? Colleges and universities, on the whole, are going to have opportunities for students in the visual and performing arts, through athletics, through different clubs, academic clubs, student leadership, student government. So these are all spaces that we want our students to be a part of. And so we can see an indication of that interest, and will this student participate in these programs through the application and through that activities list. So as I've sort of highlighted in blue there, we're building living and learning communities when in the admissions process. So it is so important, that academic factor, but also, again, I'll say this a few times, so important to know, how is a student going to be on campus as a student? Will they be a good roommate? Will they participate in classroom experiences, but maybe will they participate in leadership opportunities? Because the more robust the student body is in their engagement, we feel like our students are going to be more successful. They're going to understand what does it mean to collaborate, to really think about things creatively, to be creative. Regardless of the student's academic pursuit, students have the opportunity to learn in these different activities on campuses as well. And also, I want to note that something I try to emphasize to students that are applying is that you can come from a high school experience, a school experience with very limited activities, very limited opportunities to engage. And I'll say again, we are mindful of that depending on the context. But we also want to know that a student is interested in something and is interested in doing something. And so that is why we ask you to list all this information. And also, it isn't about competing or comparing yourself to maybe your friends or students that are applying. Colleges aren't looking to compare students. We're looking for reasons to admit students. And so if you're worried that you have a best friend or a sibling that did all of the clubs and all of the sports and all of those things, that's their context. That's a different context. I want you to be thinking about your own contributions. And it isn't necessarily just having a long list of activities, but activities that are meaningful to you that really tell your story. So I want to go through the different types of activities, and I just want to add a little context to each one so that you feel confident in what you could be listing as the different activities that you have that you're interested in. So Academic activities. We definitely, I mentioned we're looking for things outside of the classroom, but these could be pieces that are sort of in addition to the classroom experience or the academic experience. So if you participate in like a science Olympiad or different competitions on a school level, at a regional level, at a country level, we'd love to see those. If there are awards that you have, whether it is through through language, through science, through math, through competitions. These are all great, and we'd love to see those listed on your application. In the common application, there's a very specific section just for awards, but you can also mention some of this in the activities section as well. Let's say you did a long-term research project, and this could be a part of a classroom experience that took you outside of just the classroom experience too. So let's say you did a research project, you're very interested in the water quality in your town or your city, and you worked with an organization, or you worked with an instructor or a teacher, or you did individual research. We'd love to hear about that because, again, that's demonstrating curiosity, right? I mean, so many of these activities help to demonstrate a student's curiosity about a given subject. So we love to see research projects if that is available to something you've been doing. Different clubs, of course, academic clubs. So this could be Model UN or sort of our equivalents to speech and debate. Please add those as well if those are things that are interesting to you and things that you've been participating in. Some colleges, in addition to giving you the opportunity to list your activities in the activities list, may also provide the opportunity to upload a portfolio of work. And so a portfolio for a student that is interested in the visual and performing arts, when you apply to the college or university, it's going to let you know if that's something that you could submit. So in addition to saying, I was in, the theater production of Othello at my school, you may, depending on the college or university, have an opportunity to even upload a clip of your performance. And so it's important to, when you're looking at the list of colleges you're applying to see if a portfolio is an option for you. Depending on the college or university, they may have a faculty member look at that portfolio. There may actually even be scholarship attached to that portfolio. So be mindful if that's the pathway you're going to take. At the very least, though, please list if you've been in choir or you've been in band or different productions. And that's not just front of house, but let's say you helped with costume, or you were a director, or you were the stage manager. Those are all interesting, and you need those to do production. So feel free to add those pieces as well. This is sometimes these opportunities can be individual or organized. So a student may be doing independent practice of ballet, or maybe they're part of a dance company. Those all have value. Please list all of those. Clubs and organizations, this is a great opportunity to talk about leadership and organization. This could also be, in addition to, like, say, debate and chess, I also have those in there too, are different cultural organizations. So if you're part of a cultural org or one related to identity in some way, those are great to see as well. So if you have a club that is part of your identity, or if a student is LGBTQIA and they have specific clubs, those are things that you can list in that club too. It's letting the institution know these are things I'm interested in, that I participated in, and something that potentially I'd be interested in participating in the college or university level as well. Student government, from the treasurer to the president, students that have been a part of student government, or maybe are part of a collective looking at honor code or a prefect or anything like that. We love to see those different positions as well listed. So please list those out. I talked a little bit about cultural clubs, but also want to talk about cultural and religious activities. So this could be very tied to a student's faith. So we have had students, applying to Macalester that will talk about having significant time spent with their faith tradition. And so that could be a student maybe helping with a Sunday school education for young people. It could be a student that has very specific times of service for their synagogue. There are so many different types of like cultural connection and activities that a student can have. Again, those are things outside of the classroom experience. Those are things that take up the student's time, and in many ways is so closely tied to their identity. We love to see that too, and I love when a student will also add that part of their identity and who they are. That could, for religious activities, it could also include pilgrimages. It could include practices. It can include different, maybe community service or civic engagement opportunities attached to that religious identity as well, or to the faith space that a student is a part of. So hobby and interests, I think this can be a good one, but my one caution is I always have to give it a second glance if I see a student that just lists individual hobbies or interests without anything else. But I think hobbies and interests can be good to add as long as they're significant. If you knit, a few hours a year, not significant, but let's say that you knit hats and you donate them, or you knit hats for your family, or this is something you do every day or every week. That's one thing to sort of designate this as a hobby of interest, is something that is a part of who I am, that I do all the time. But I always caution students from just sort of listing out all their hobbies. I see that too. And we don't need to see everything you're interested in. Let's have those be significant interests and hobbies that are listed there. One that I think does not get enough attention and students don't think to add are part-time jobs and internships. If a student is working 5 hours or 10 hours a week, I sometimes see students working upwards to 20 hours a week. That's like 3 shifts of work in the US. That's a lot of time spent working. I think the story that's being told when someone lists that they're working is that this isn't necessarily leisurely time. This is time where they are clocking in, they're getting paid, and maybe they're working Saturday and Sunday, or they're working after school. I think these are important to note. It shows that this is a part of what a student has to do. In some cases, for some students that apply, that I see in the application process, they have to work in order to support their family or large families, or students that are choosing part-time jobs because it's of something that they're really interested in and they want to continue to explore, and they also get to get paid for it, which is great. But it does take up a lot of time, and it's just so important to note, if you have a part-time job, hopefully not like something on the full-time job, but a part-time job to help us get an understanding of sort of what does your everyday look like. Same thing with internships. And so internships can be paid or unpaid in this category, but where you have a set aside dedicated amount of time that you're working with a business, an industry, an organization, maybe you're shadowing somebody in a job. Maybe part of even your curriculum at your school is to spend time with somebody in a specific industry. Those are all important. So please list those as well. Those internships can go into the summer, of course, too, as will those part-time jobs, might even become full-time jobs. Be sure to list that as well. This could also include a camp counselor or a lifeguard, or maybe you're working at a small farm, or you're doing something like that. Those are interesting. Please don't forget to list those too. Sports. So sports are, I think, when I think about the Macalester context, around 20% of our students on campus are varsity athletes. So they compete at a varsity level. In the US context, we have 3 different divisions that look very different, and starting with Division 1 all the way down to Division 3, that's Macalester. And the division sports look very, very different. They compete differently, they have different scholarship, but as you go from 1 to 3, the importance and the amount of time that a student is a varsity athlete gets smaller as you get down to Division 3. That's what Macalester is. So for students at a Division 3 school, it really is academics. It just should be academics first for every institution, and athletics sort of second in that space, but students are going to spend less time. Students that are interested in varsity athletics athletics at a college or university should not be telling an institution in their activities list. That is part of a conversation that happens much, much earlier in the US context. Students interested in playing at a varsity level should be communicating through the athletics department at that university or college. That being said, most students are not interested in competing at the varsity level. They're just going to know that this is a sport that they were a part of in their high school experience and want to let you know that they did it and all the time that they spent, but they're not necessarily interested in continuing it in a competitive level on the college side. A lot of colleges and universities have what we call club and intramural sports. So you can still participate them. You can still, have a pickup football game on a Saturday or play ultimate frisbee. We have very popular ultimate frisbee teams here at Mac, and students that have never played a certain sport that can play an intramural and club too. So it's about trying new things, of course, as well. But what's so interesting about athletics in the activities list is it tends to be pretty sustained. So we tend to see students that played a sport from, that 9th year in our context up to that 12th year. I think what it shows us when students are playing in either club sports or in their high school context, a lot of sustained involvement. And they really, as a lot of athletes, musicians, those with a lot of really intense interests, have some great time management skills. That's sort of a takeaway for us, is that when we see students with sustained engagement, and I know that they've had to practice after every school day after school. I'm like, wow, they must really know how to manage their time, because they not only have to do their schoolwork, but they have to participate in this activity and then do their homework after that as well. So community leagues, clubs, as it was listed here for athletics, be sure to list those out. And I'm going to show you in a bit some examples of where I think it's done really, really well. Community engagement, this can be a tricky one, because I think there's been a narrative out there that students have to have a ton of community engagement or have to have a lot of volunteer time on their application. And the truth of it is that some high schools have it sort of as part of their curriculum that they do service. You can include that on your activities list. There are students that are doing independent community service through their church or their faith space. They're doing it through maybe an organization. In our context, it's like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. I know there's equivalent here, and it's slipping my mind right now. And there are these different organizations that are doing community engagement. We, of course, love to see students engaging in different ways. And I think what's so great about the college experience is that you can continue to do civic engagement, but really drawing from your interests and from what you like to do. I think it's important to go to food shelves and stock food shelves and to do the opportunities in community engagement that can be sort of, you step in and you do this role and you step out. I feel like in college, we really try to emphasize that students are going to do civic engagement in an area of interest or something they really like to do. So that could be maybe designing a website for a nonprofit, or it could be, working on translation services for recent immigrants or refugees into a certain space. Those are harder to find as a high school student or a student in a secondary experience. And so don't feel like you have to have tons of hours to demonstrate to us that you are service minded. I think even just having a couple of opportunities, if you've been able to through your school or through a school club, do some service-like activities, I think it can demonstrate that you're interested in your community. And it gets back to that earlier message of we're building communities, living and learning spaces. And I think community engagement opportunities show us that that's something you're going to do on our campuses as well. Another piece here is participation in social movements. We see a lot of this in applications to Macalester. We have a long history of social activism on campus. And so we will see things like students engaging in political campaigns, where maybe they are handing out flyers or they're doing canvassing. We call canvassing here, where they're going door to door and talking about a specific political candidate, to those that are doing social movements towards different rights, rights and privileges within your community. So this could be access to access to different initiatives for a very specific marginalized group, for example. So we'll have students that participate in action or in going to community and talking about different sort of actions, or what's the word that I'm looking for? Different proposals towards our state government. So for example, we have some recent proposals that went through our legislative section that talked about driver's license for all, or housing rights for recent immigrants, things like that. Being engaged in those sorts of social movements. If students have the opportunity to do that, if you have something that you participated in, please feel like you can add that to this as well. And then a big one, another big one that I think doesn't get the attention that it deserves is family obligations and responsibilities. And so I really emphasize this one because I think for many students, this is a reality. You come home from school and you're taking care of a younger sibling until mom or dad or a guardian comes home from work. That matters, and that means something. That is time outside of the classroom. That is time where you have to be responsible for another sibling. I've also seen examples of applicants talking about caring for an ailing grandparent or for an ailing family member. If you have multi-generational families in your home, that there might be obligations that you have as a family member, roles that you have to play in your family. And this can have cultural difference to it as well. And I think it's important to note that, because when I see a student that is working part-time, has activities, but also is taking care of 3 siblings after school, Monday through Friday, I have a good sense of what's taking up that student's time and what is happening for them. So if I saw a student with a significant amount of obligations that were sort of outside of their control, it would make me think about their ability to add any additional activities after that, right? And so I've had students apply and say, you know, I'm looking after my siblings until 6 o'clock at night. That would make it really difficult for that student to then engage in other activities after school because of those family obligations. And so again, so important to note those if that is your situation and that is your context. I want to share some examples. So you'll see some snapshots of activities being listed in the Common Application of actual applicants to Macalester College. You will not see names or anything that would indicate the student themselves. And I don't share these for those where I feel like they could be improved as an opportunity to shame them in any way. This is a learning opportunity and an opportunity for you to take a look at them and see how we could improve upon them, and to really illustrate how to best put your best foot forward, because that's what I want you to gain from this experience, is that you feel empowered to go through this process and again, tell your story in the best way. So some of these are going to feel really obvious, and that's okay, but I'll give you a few seconds to read them, and then you can come up, no quiz, internally of what you could have done maybe a little differently in this space. And also want to note that when application readers are reading an application in the US context, there are different ways that we read applications. One is you will have a primary single reader reading an application first. They're reading the whole application, they're looking for certain information, they may do a summary. Then second, you might have that goes through a committee process or to a secondary reader. You have multiple eyes looking on that application. Some colleges have what we call committee-based organization. And in Macalister's case, that's what we use. We have 2 readers reading the same application at the same time, and then having a discussion about that student's application. And so this next fact is not to alarm you, but also to have you be aware, as your sort of kind of admissions counselors for the next 5 minutes, is that the speed of reading an application can vary depending on the college or university. I'm very pleased that at Macalester, we can spend upwards to 15 to 20 minutes on a file. I know that doesn't sound like much, but if the average is more 5 minutes, and I don't mean that to be soul crushing, it's just that is the speed of which they are able to read applications. That is just sort of the reality. And so how you list your activities how you list this information becomes very, very important for people who are so skilled at reading applications very, very quickly. So as I show you this next example, and let's say you had 20 seconds to, or not even 20 seconds, let's say you had 4 seconds to read this activity, what is going to stick out for you? So if I've given it its 4 seconds, I maybe am not even completely absorbing the fact that the student was a singer and a dancer in their high school. I'm observing that there's misspellings. So here was this great opportunity for the student that has done quite a bit in this experience. And even if you look at, and you'll see in this example, and for all of them, students have the opportunity to list the number of years they engaged in the activity, the number of hours per week that they engage in the activity, and it's something that they're continuing to do. So that information on the left is really important because it gives me a sense of how much time a student has spent on this activity. All of that sort of goes away, unfortunately, because as I read the description, what is the message that I'm getting? I'm getting the message that the student did not proofread before they submitted. And I think they'd probably be horrified if they knew that there were misspellings in this space. It is very easy to do this. And so I'm going to say this a few times. Please proofread when you're listing your activities, but also listing the descriptions for the activities. So here was, I think if we could redo this, would be to go through, correct any misspellings, and then also maybe restructure this sentence as well. So you have a very short space to pack in a lot of information. So when looking at activities, I would recommend put them all into a Word document. Don't type it into the application, put them all into a Word document so you can see and spell check and make sure that everything looks clear before you then paste them into the activities list. Okay, here's another one. I wish I could hear what you have to say, but I'm going to imagine. And so what's the opportunity here? One, again, some sustained involvement. The student participated in swimming for 3 years. And all I have here is swimming in races. What I would love to know is the type of swim team, the type of, there'd be the stroke that the student it participates in. I did the 400 relay in the backstroke. I did, opportunities to really dive in. I'm like, what are the things that the student did on the swim team? Was there any leadership attached to being on that swim team? Was there anything gained from that experience? Learned about team, being a team member, collaboration, time management, all these opportunities that were really missed by this student, just noting that they were in races. When we know to be in swimming for that long, there's so much more to that commitment. Okay, let's keep going. So here's an example of 2 that I have listed. And I think what's interesting about these is I think the content itself has there's a lot of merit to it. I just wish that it was better organized. And so as you read through these, what is missing for me is the type of faith that this is for this student. Says for parish, but a little bit more information on what that would look like. And what does engaging with the community, what does that mean? Does that mean reading to young children during a faith hour, developing better communication and engaging skills? So that is, I think there's opportunity to make these more robust. And I think the same thing for the soccer team member. I think it's a lot better, but I think it could have had some polish there in the actual articulation of what they did and a period as well. This is an example, and this is a light example of order. And this is in my top tips. Always lead with your strengths. Always lead with your most sustained activity. I sometimes will see a student that has like 2-week engagements or very light engagements or maybe 1-year engagement. And then at the bottom have been, been in karate for the last 12 years of my life, and I am a black belt. And so if I have 5 seconds to look at this or a minute, I have to scroll all the way down to see the most sustained activity. So always lead with your strengths, always lead with the most important activity to you at the top. That could be your family obligations, that could be your job, that could be student leadership, it could be all of those things, but start at the top and then work your way down in the amount of engagement that you have in that activity. So here's one that I really like. So this is one that I really like. And I have this one because they don't all have to be president of the club, secretary of the club. Sometimes you're just a member of that club. And so I think this is well organized. They do not need to be necessarily be complete sentences, as you can tell. You don't have a ton of space, but I get a lot from this description. It tells me a lot about this student and their engagement in their Asian Culture Club. So I think this is an example of a student doing this really well. This is a solid listing for an activity. Another one is this one too. I get so much information from this. My takeaway is this student is very involved in playing the piano, and I can see that not only in the description, but also in the time spent on the left side there. So you see that this is a significant part of this student's experience. If this would be a great first thing to list for a student on their activities list, if say this is the thing that has the most impact on who they are and their time outside of the classroom. So again, an example where I think it's done really, really well. This is another one. So getting back to that family responsibilities, here's an example. Babysitting, including feeding, putting my little sister to bed. That's quite a bit. That's quite a bit in there that a student has to do. Making food for their family, and also maybe has some homework in there too that they also have to do as a student. So this is a great example of a student letting us know what their family responsibilities look like in the home. This is my least favorite. And it's my least favorite because, as you can see, there's nothing listed here. And I internally, I get a little sad when I open up an application and I don't see anything listed in the activities list, because I just don't believe that. I believe there is something going on in that student's life. And unfortunately, I don't have the opportunity to ask them that question. I don't have the opportunity to call them and send them an email and say, you know what, you may have missed this. That's not going to happen. Colleges and universities are not going to ask. So you are in the application process in its entirety advocating for yourself. You're advocating for your academic performance, for how you're going to contribute to that campus community. So even if you plan to submit a resume, and students will have the opportunity at many institutions to upload a resume, or not a CV, but like a resume for them of the different things that you've done. And maybe you have to do that as part of your high school experience. Do not count on that resume being attached in a way that's going to be easy for the reader to see. That will look different from institution to institution. I would never tell a student to only submit a resume. Always duplicate. Always duplicate everything in your activities that you have with your resume. It could be that that resume did not upload properly and wasn't attached to your file. And if that's the case, this is what an application reader will see. And that would be very sad. That would be very sad to not have all of those activities listed in the application. We will, from time to time, be able to see if a student lists nothing on the application, a counselor or a teacher may mention something the student has been engaged in, but you can't count on that. So please go ahead and duplicate your efforts when listing your activities in the application. So all of that, let's hit the top tips, and then I'd love to hear your questions. Again, lead with your strengths. You're looking for quality over quantity. So you want to start strong with the things that take up the most of your time. And when you make that list in your Word document, do not just type it straight into the application. When you have it in your Word document that you've constructed, take a look at it, read through it, put it away for a day, come back and say, is this really everything? Have I captured everything? Be sure to add meaningful descriptions. Do not put just, I ran on a team. I want to hear more about that you love, cross country, you run also in your city park as you train for the marathon you're in. These are all meaningful pieces. So be sure to add positions, add the responsibilities associated with it, and add any lessons that you've taken away from it as well. One thing that I forgot to mention, one thing that I found that students have added, and I'm saying this is so out of order, but I want to make sure I don't forget this. Students who have a significant transportation time to their high school, I really encourage you to include that somewhere in the application. It could be in the activities list. It could be in the additional information section too, where students can add more context. When a student says to me or writes an application, it takes me an hour and a half to get to my school in the morning and an hour and a half on the way back, that really is going to limit some of the activities they're able to do in their high school experience. So sorry, I didn't have that in order, but that's something to think about too if you have a significant transportation time as part of your school day. Don't forget to proof. Please proof a couple of times. Please proof. Please do not do this on your phone. And if you have issues with access to internet, I know those can be real things, but this is really important. Please don't do these on your phone. Please try to use a computer when writing out your activities list and your essays as well. I see a lot of lowercase i's, and we don't want to see that because you're trying to put your best foot forward. And lastly, don't be shy. This is the one opportunity you have to talk about how great you are. And that might not be a comfortable feeling for you. I'm not a boastful person by nature. I'm sure a lot of you maybe are a little bit maybe humble or shy, or you're like, well, I don't know. I'm not supposed to talk about this, but please exalt your accomplishments. And this is your opportunity to talk about all the wonderful things that you're doing in your high school experience, the obligations that you have at home, your responsibilities, all of these pieces. So please put them out there. Please let them know. We on the application side, again, are looking for reasons to admit students, and we're looking for students that are going to contribute to our communities. We're not going to know that unless you let us know who you are as a student. So with that, that was a lot of me talking. So if you have any questions, I will stop this video. I will stop sharing here and take a look at the Q&A. And I must have just done a very thorough job because I don't see any questions yet. But
I think you have. I think you have. That was very, very insightful, honestly, and great tips, some great tips to take away as well.
Wonderful. I think I have one. Is it better to focus on extracurricular activities that are connected to your specialty, or choose diverse extracurricular activities? I think that's a really wonderful question. So I think it's important to think about the college or university you're applying to as part of the answer to that question. So if you are applying for an engineering program, for example, specifically for an engineering school, or you're applying to a conservatory for visual and performing arts, I think that you should definitely list those activities related to your intended major. College and universities are going to present a little bit different. There are universities where you're applying to that university for that program. And then there are institutions like Macalester and other liberal arts and sciences colleges where you're not applying to your major. So it really does depend on the college university you're applying to. So I would say for institutions where you're not necessarily applying to that specific area, I would encourage you to be more diverse in your extracurricular activities. But you can also list them all. It depends on your quantity as well, too. I'm giving you a really long, broad answer. But let me give you an example to illustrate this. So if I were a student that was really interested in environmental science, and I wanted to go into environmental science as my major, I would probably front load any research that I've done, any initiatives, any community engagement opportunities I've done that is connected to environmental science. But I'm also going to put in there that I play the piano. It might not be right at the top, but it's also going to be there, unless it's like I play as much as that applicant. I might put that one at the top because that was pretty cool. So the short answer is to be really mindful of the college university you're applying to, and are these activities that are also offered at that institution. Thank you for your question.
think those are all the questions we had.
Great.
That was, I mean, once again, very insightful and definitely some great tips. So thank you very much for running this webinar for us. It
Yeah.
was honestly, it was great, and I'm definitely taking some of those tips into my advising as well.
Good. Good.
So thank you very much. I hope everyone has a good evening. And like I said, the webinar will be available for everyone later this week. So I'll send it out to anyone that has registered for the webinar. So Elian, once again, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm guessing you're somewhere where it's still daytime.
It's lunchtime. So I
Lunchtime.
will,
Awesome.
thanks for everybody for tuning in. Thank you for the invite and wishing everybody the best of luck with this process.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.